Alright, in this tutorial you're going to learn how to manipulate the pre-made particle effects in hope that you'll learn a bit about them and be able to make your own. Okay, to start off we're going to just import one. So you go to Scripts, Particle Effect, and we're going to be using the explosion. We'll just keep the default settings at the moment. Now, if you've got a slow computer this might go a bit slower, but it doesn't affect the final exported version. As there you can see a load of shapes, and they slowly go out. Now it doesn't look much like an explosion, and so you're thinking, well, that's not very good. But what you have to do is export it, or render it. And you notice it takes a while to render because there's a lot of particles. And then once it's done, there you go, an explosion. So, the reason it only looks like that is because if you previewed every single one of the particles at once, it would just slow your computer down so much you wouldn't be able to work. And you can see this if you go into the particle settings. See, the preview is only 20, but the actual particle is 2000, which is 100 times more. Alright, so we're going to be playing with those settings, but first of all, we want to get rid of the flame, because we only want to be working with one. So let's drag the smoke out and delete everything else. Alright, so now we just got smoke. So yeah, that's not bad smoke. But we want to change it, so instead of it spreading out, let's imagine it's coming out a chimney. So I'm just going to draw a quick box. Just imagine it's a chimney. Okay, there's my chimney. Then we're going to move the center of the layer, which is the emitter, down here. Now you notice it stays in the same place. But that's because each time you change a frame, it has to calculate where the particles are. So it won't move until you actually change a frame. There we go, now it's in a different place. But still, we have the problem of it's spreading out way too much. See, that doesn't really look like a chimney. It looks like a bomb's gone off in a house and dust's gone out. We want it to look more like just smoke. So we're going to have to play with the settings. So let's click settings. So let's look at what we got here. We got the particle count, which is how many particles you are actually going to have. And we want 2000. So we'll have 2000 copies of everything that's inside the particle layer. And that themselves is actually 12. Just 12 little shapes that have a small animation assigned to them, where they just get bigger and fade out and then smaller. And each of them are slightly different to give variation. But all of them get bigger and smaller. Right, so that's what the particle count is. It's how many copies of those you want. The preview particle is how many copies you want to see while you're working on it. The lifetime is how long, once emitted, each particle will last. So if you want it to only appear for, a second, then you have 24. If you want each particle to last for a bit longer, then put it a bit higher. Alright, now source width. Now this is just basically how big this circle here is. And it's different from scaling it. Oops, problem. I'll just start up again. Okay, so I've got it back again. Now, as I was saying, it's different from just doing this, because doing this makes it bigger, of course, but it also stretches out all the particles inside. If you don't want it to happen, what you do is change the source width. So let's change that to 2. Now it looks like it's had exactly the same effect, but it hasn't, because the particles are all the same. They're just coming out of a bigger area. Now for this effect we don't want that, because we want it chimney, so we want it kind of small. So let's change that to 0.5 2.5. Okay. So let's move it back down. Okay. So let's render that. Notice, even though we made it narrower, it still looks like it doesn't look very good. So we've got to change something else. So let's keep going through the settings. Source height, that's much the same as source width. Source depth, much the same. Velocity is how fast it is emitted. So let's change that and see what that does. Let's render. Well, everything is a lot further out. Now that could be useful, but we still need to change the direction so it is narrower. Let's keep going through the settings. Alright, we've got velocity spread and damping, and we get down to here, which is the direction and acceleration. Now, we want direction up, that's right, but the spread, that's how much it will spread out. At the moment it's almost 160 degrees, which means that it's spread out pretty far. We don't want it that far, we want it something like 15 degrees. And this last thing is where it will accelerate. So we want to accelerate sideways at a rate of 10. Alright, let's render that. There we go, that's looking better. We've made it a bit high, but I can fix that. Okay, that's okay. There's just one problem, which is that after we get here, the particles stop, because the particles are only set to go this long. So what we do, we just drag this longer. So that will keep emitting. So yeah. Now, making this longer is different from making it invisible, because even after this finishes, the particles still stay active. As you can see, they're still active, but even after the end of that. But after this, it's not making any new particles. So at most, they're only going to last an extra 30 frames, because that's what we set the lifetime to. If you want them to suddenly stop, you can just add a frame in invisibility. Of course, this doesn't look so natural, because they're just flying away slowly, and it just disappears. So you're probably going to want to wait until they disappeared first, before making it invisible. Oops. If we just look at the last settings, on at start just means you want it to start on the start. Orient particles is if your particles run the wrong way, you can click that and fix it. Free floating, evenly spaced, just if you want if you think your particles are too together, you can click that. Randomize playback if you want it to give it a slightly more random look. Alright, in the next tutorial you'll be learning how to make your own particle effects using birds.